We're excited to welcome you all today for today's seminar, which is a collaboration between the US HUPO ECR, HUPO ECR, and CNPN. And it's really fun to have these opportunities to bring our global community together. First, I want to thank the organizers of this seminar, Kyrie Patterson, Coleman Nielsen, and Nate Basisti from the US HUPO ECR, Mara Goodyear from CNPN, and Charlotte Hutchings from HUPO. We appreciate all the work that they put into bringing us this great session. And I'm happy to co-moderate today's webinar with Valeria and Siddharth. We'll start off with hearing from three distinguished speakers today, and they'll briefly share their backgrounds and insights on conference strategies, followed by a panel discussion. So please post your questions in the Q&A box, which you'll see on the bottom right hand of your screen. And all the questions will be read off after all the speakers give their talks, and we'll read them off for you during the panel discussion. So we're diving into a fun and timely topic today, so we hope you've brought your best questions. And with that, I'll hand it over to Valeria to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Amanda. So our first speaker is Dr. Benjamin Osborne. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Pharmacology and Chemical Biology at the University of Pittsburgh. The focus of Dr. Osborne's research has been the development of single-cell proteomics and single-cell mass spectrometry as tools for biomedical and pharmacology research. Dr. Osborne is also the co-host of the Proteomics podcast. I would recommend checking out that series. And he's the author of the blog News in Proteomics Research. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, and we'll find where I put those slides. Glad we practiced. Okay, so I'm gonna assume this is all working, but yeah, no, I'm gonna talk about not really sure where to go, but maybe just kick off points for some of these questions in the conversation afterward, right? So I guess I gauge this more toward maybe the earliest of career researchers, and I guess a little first starting point, like why would you even go to a conference, right? Because honestly, it sounds great. Let's all go in February to someplace like Missouri, someplace you probably maybe you're aware exists, and you probably never plan to go, right? And you're going to see more people like me talking a lot, and maybe it's going to be more self-important talking and rambling, right? And if you're lucky, right, you'll put in an abstract, you'll stand in front of a poster, and people are going to ask you questions about your work, and so maybe grill you on it, right? And then everybody looks forward to either have to buy your own meal or you have to go out to big group meals, which are really comfortable for some people, maybe not comfortable for everyone, right? So I think if I was going to do this, like when I think about the conferences that I've done poorly and conferences that I've done a little better, right? I think it's really important to plan in advance. I've got this neuroplasticity lack or something where I have a lot of trouble with some of these like small telephone devices and installing the apps and getting them linked up to my calendar. And I eventually, I've been here 6 months. I'm gonna have to have somebody install the university email app on my phone. But for you younger people, it's easier for you to probably get those set up, and then you can actually go and you plan out your conference, right? Had a co-mentee recently that was very, very good at going to conferences. She would have it planned out where she was one of 7 people in the world looking at ADP ribosylation, which is just a miserable PTM to look at, and she would hunt these people down at conferences. Chances are you're not really competing, right? A lot of people doing ADPs were doing cancer, she was doing viruses, so they were happy to exchange notes, and I gave her connections at these meetings, and I really, really just respected how well she uses conferences. I'm an obsessive note taker. If I've ever been to your poster anytime in the last decade, I have notes on it, your name, a synopsis of your poster, et cetera, every talk, every one, right? And then, I don't know that that's everyone's learning style, but it's my learning style, right? That I can go back to US HUPO 2020 and I have notes from your poster if I drop by or your talk if I sat in it, right? Again, notes. And then network at the networking events, right? It's so important to do this. And there's a difference between, networking and then, yeah, I don't know, yeah, having 7 glasses of wine and forgetting that you were there, right? There's a different thing, right? And then you can get contact info. I don't know how people exchange contact info these days, social media things, whatever is the new way of doing things. But it helps to have written notes. There was something called Twitter that no longer exists, and so a lot of times we would exchange like Twitter handles, but that's gone. So it helps that I actually had people's names and phone numbers that I had notes from, right? And so, if I was going to recommend how to, for the earliest career researchers to be like conference, CEOs, let's lead with new ideas for your work. Like go in with a plan. Hey, I am going to make my work better, improve my day, take advice back to the rest of my team about their work or about my work to maybe make it better, right? It's so great to have these connections, right? Then there's a surprising number of journals that require you to put down 3, 5, or 7 recommended reviewers that are going to peer review your work. Like maybe that's your thesis. Having a good list of people that are qualified and aren't dicks, right? Like to like review your work is an invaluable thing, right? And it's like, well, okay, this is something in my field, and they hated my poster, right? You'd actually say not recommended. It's nice to have those names. You have those connections. Of course, people who might be hiring later, going in, this is where you get to meet those pharma people. This is where you get to meet the person who might hire you from a postdoc or whatever, right? And then you get context for future collaborations, right? You can use those. I've got an example right now where I was looking through people's poster abstracts from last US HUPO where they were doing Apex and these other, um, BioAD and these other methods that I haven't used. And now we've got a proposal where I need to do Apex. And so I'm looking up, poster abstracts for, people who were very, very recently doing Apex that I can maybe ask questions if we get stuck and this is harder than I think that it is, right? And then, there's just little benefits, right? That, that you had to be there to see these things, right? And then this is honestly, all I have for advice here. And I hope these are kicking off points.
Wow, thank you very much for so many insights, and it was a really fun presentation. So I think now we can move forward to our next speaker, and Sidna will introduce.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Siddhant. I'm part of the operation management team of CNPN, and it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Matthew Lawal Adam, whom I work with in the operation management team. So Dr. Matthew Lawal Adam, he's an associate professor in the Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and Immunology at the University of Ottawa. His lab aims to develop computational methods that will lead to a better understanding of cellular mechanisms and disease processes. Dr. Lawal Adam has received multiple prizes for his research, including the CNPN New Investigator Award. Dr. Lawal Adam is the Vice President of the Operation Management Team for the Canadian National Proteomics Network. He's now the member of the HUPO Executive Committee and one of the Congress co-chairs for the upcoming HUPO World Congress, which is going to happen in Toronto in Canada. Dr. Adam, it's yours.
Thank you very much, Siddhant, and thank you to the organizers for the invitation. So I'm also going to give a few insights on what you can do maybe to maximize your time and your experience at HUPO, which is coming up. And by the way, the regular registration deadline is on Friday, so keep an eye on that if you haven't registered yet. So I'm doing a little bit of a promotion here. But basically, I'm going to reiterate some of the points that Ben mentioned because they are really important. But the key part for me when I go to a conference is really to make a plan. And I used to do that when I was a graduate student. I used to do that when I was a postdoc. And I still do that today for most conferences that I go to. And I think it's especially important when you're an early career researcher because the resources are limited, right? You don't go to that many conferences. It costs a certain amount of money to go to a conference. So you want to maximize your experience, basically your investment on when you're going there. And so when I mean making a plan is you have to basically figure out, why am I going to this conference? What am I trying to achieve to go to this conference? And often for me, when I was an early career researcher, that was really thinking about either I want to find my postdoc, or I want to find, as a postdoc, I want to find a job at a faculty. And in fact, I mean, I'm going to plug HUPO again. This HUPO is the conference where I found both of these things. So I found my postdoc supervisor at HUPO, and I actually, thanks to HUPO, probably got the job that I'm now at the University of Ottawa. And the key was that I basically looked at the schedule of the 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 program, sorry, of the symposium, and then I look who are the key people I actually want to talk to, and then I was basically making my own schedule around their speaking engagements, or the different places that I knew they would be at because they were their name was in the program at that specific time. And so I had a clear plan of where I was going to go, and where I was going to meet these people, when, and what I was going to pitch to these people way before the conference actually started, to make sure that I was on top of this. And the way that this actually worked out is also, sometimes people may not actually be where they're supposed to be at a certain time. Flights get delayed and things like that. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but use other people to track people down and really make a point of finding a person. And I could tell you a short story where I was looking for a specific chair of a specific department at university that I wanted to work at. And I knew my postdoc advisor at the time was at the conference and knew that person. And I kept texting him saying, like, I can't find this person. The chair of that department is not there. They're supposed to be in that room at that time, but they're not there. 2 days later at the conference, he texts me back and he goes, he's looking at posters right now, number something, come quick. And so I ended up bursting out of a talk. To this day, I still apologize to the person who was speaking in that session. Bursting out of that talk, running through the poster hall to find the person I wanted to talk to. Little did I know my postdoc advisor already gave a good word and everything, but I still played the game that I was out of breath and mimicking that I was just briefly looking at posters around or browsing around the posters. But that's really what you I think you should focus on, is really to think about what I want to get out of this conference and make a plan around it. And it's good afterwards to evaluate when you went to the conference, did that work out? Did I achieve the objectives that I wanted to achieve at that conference? And if you did not, reevaluate your strategy and talk to people and saying like why that didn't work out. So that's my first advice. My second advice is, even though I sound very rigid with my plan, stay open-minded. There are things that will happen during the conference, other opportunities that will occur where you'll get invited to go somewhere. Maybe there's going to be a group that wanted to go to lunch at some place and you were planning to go to that poster session or that talk. I mean, if there's an opportunity that sounds good where you're going to meet new people, keep an open mind and actually go with the flow. Unless it's really a specific person that you want to talk to, I think it's worth it to leave yourself open to surprises and make new contacts and friends perhaps through the process. So be open-minded. If there are spontaneous events that occur, I say go with the flow, try to go for it, and enjoy your time. And the other aspect is networking. Obviously, Ben talked about this. It is really critical to network, and there's different ways that you can do that. You can certainly go to networking events, and another shameless plug. HUPO has a bunch of networking events that are super fun that you should attend. But there's more to that also, right? Networking can be done through interactions after talks. Maybe you're not comfortable asking a question on the microphone right after a talk, but you can go see the speaker afterwards and ask a question and then exchange contact information. So that's an option for networking, right? It doesn't involve necessarily involve going to an off-site event or anything like that. You can one thing that I also enjoy quite a bit at conferences is the opportunity to network and having discussions in these types of panel discussions like the one we're going to have online today, but then in person it can be sometimes it can generate different types of interactions, but to actually attend those panel discussions where you can ask questions, you can talk to people afterwards, there's a lot of organic discussions that happen afterwards. I find those to be often the most rewarding at conferences. Yes, the talks are great, obviously, and you hear about the most cutting edge science. You get updated on the literature that you think you should know, or new parts of literature that you didn't know about. But going to panel discussions, all sorts of different meetings or parts of the conference that are really trying to simulate interactions among researchers, and HUPO ECR does a lot of that also with all sorts of activities and mentoring sessions that they do. I think those are really fantastic, and you get to have those meaningful interactions with people that actually remember you afterwards. And what's great and what helps for people to remember those interactions is to actually maintain your network afterwards. So that means sometimes it's just about sending an email after the conference and say, hey, I really enjoyed the discussion we had after your talk or after this panel discussion. I look forward to seeing you again. That's it, right? It's nothing engaging, nothing that you're committing to or anything like that, but you're just like sending that extra email and the person will reply, and that leaves a little bit more of an impression in their mind. So later on, if you need help for something, Ben talked about reviewers for journals. It can be sometimes you need arm's length reviewers for awards or fellowships or scholarship you apply to. Those people are really key in your future. It's good to have these friends that you don't work with, quote unquote, like you stay on the same community, but you're not actively collaborating with them. But they are friendly, and the fact that they know you. I mean, humans are all biased. We try to be as objective as possible when evaluating people's research, but if they've seen your poster or if they talk with you, often it implies that they'll be potentially a little bit less negative than it would be to somebody that they don't know at all. So in the end, for your career, that's only beneficial. So I'll stop there. And there's plenty of things that I guess we're going to discuss afterwards regarding tips and tricks for conferences. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Thank you, Dr. Matthew Lawal Adam, for your insights, and that was very, very interesting and very. Thank you for your insights. And then I will let Valeria introduce our next speaker, and next is yours.
Awesome. So our next speaker is Laura Herring. Dr. Laura Herring is an associate professor in the pharmacology department and the director of the metabolomics and proteomics core at the University of North Carolina. She has a strong interest in biomarker discovery, phosphoproteomics, and chemoproteomics. She's primarily responsible for overseeing all administrative aspects of the core, facilitating and designing projects with collaborators, and leading proteomics and metabolomics initiatives.
Thank you, Valeria. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Let me share my screen. I don't have many slides, but some talking points. So can you all see my slides? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So yeah, I'm the director of a core facility at UNC. And I'll talk, mostly about my early career strategy for a conference, but also like early to mid-career briefly, because I think throughout your career, I have a different strategy now than I was an early grad student. So let's jump into it. One of my biggest pieces of advice, just like off the bat, is try to be intentional about branching out. You go to a conference, and I know it's really easy to stay with your like core group from your grad school lab, or a group that you've met throughout the course of your career too. It's really easy just to stick with like who you know and then go around in a group. But I think what I found super useful is to like try to do a little bit by yourself even if it's just a little bit, right? Because I think that's where you can meet new people more easily, is when you're flying solo and you don't really have someone that you need to like be with the whole time. I think it's really helpful, like to learn. But also in addition to that, planning ahead, which is what the other two speakers have said as well, it's really critical. Using the conference apps have been super helpful in the past few years, especially like the ASMS app or the US HUPO app, where you can really plan out a schedule on your phone. So I try to do that way before, or, at least a day or two before I go to the conference. And then like they've said, look people up, look up topics that you're really interested in. And make sure you put them on your calendar so you don't miss them. Conferences can be really overwhelming, especially the really big ones. But that's why having like a rough schedule is helpful. Again, as our speaker said earlier, it's also good to be flexible. So it's nice to have dinners planned out, right? And like social events planned out, but some of the best conversations I've had are when someone's just like, hey, do you want to go get some snacks or whatever after the session? So I'm like, oh yeah, now we can continue our discussion, and not worry like I'm missing something that was planned. For trainees, I think it is nice to have like a little short self-introduction. Especially, of course, if you're presenting at your poster, you want to have a little like canned speech you give to people, right? So that you're presenting yourself the best you can, basically. And as we've heard before, I think a lot of the best discussions I've had with either trainees or fellow, researchers in my area are when we go to the poster sessions. This is where I actually met Coleman, who invited me to present at the at this webinar right now. So we met at US HUPO in 2024 at his poster. So it's where a lot of networking can happen. I would also recommend to get outside your comfort zone instead of just talking to fellow trainees. Go see the vendors, right? They're there, they're really supporting the conference. And I really think, depending on what stage and what you're looking to get out of the conference itself, it could be very beneficial to talk to vendors, not only for what you're doing in your lab right now, like maybe they could get you a demo for software, right? That's where you can learn about what kinds of offers they have to give. And then, of course, there are certain things you want to keep in mind if you're actually looking for a job. So some conferences have specific, like a specific place or area where you would go to have like an interview or sign up to discuss different jobs that are open in the area, in your research area. But also just if you know of someone that you really want to work with, right? If you're looking for a postdoc, it will be pushing outside of your comfort zone sometimes, but I would like truly try to reach out to these people at their talks or at their poster presentations. Just seek out people, or maybe it's not like the PI or the investigator, but members of the lab. You want to learn more about what they're doing, get your name out there, right? Just really try to reach out. Sometimes it can be hard, but it can pay off. I don't know how long I've talked, but I will go on to the early mid-career stage. I think this is helpful for anyone, not just later on after your postdoc or whatever. Now that I have a group, we like to actually like coordinate when we go to conferences, right? Like we're in a core facility, so we're really trying to gauge like what the industry, what the field is moving towards, right? Like, is there a consensus on a method that we all should be using for application X? So that's one thing we try to do at conferences, is like get consensus in fields, especially for core. But we coordinate, so we actually have like an internal lab message board before big conferences, and these are a couple of points that we like discuss on our message board, right? Like, what do we want to accomplish? Like, what do you want to personally accomplish here? Who should we talk to? What sessions or workshops should we attend, and meet up and side events? So now we have like a running list of all of these topics. And then after the conference, we look back and we're like, did we accomplish what we wanted to accomplish? Like, so it's just nice to like have it written down, right? Strategic networking, of course. I think some of these apply to, again, everybody, but like identifying collaborators, right? Like PIs you want to connect with, and like I said before, vendors of instruments. And then balance between learning and visibility. That can be hard because you want to go to all these sessions and listen and learn, but also you want to like talk to the vendors, especially if you're like in the market to buy something. Volunteering, at least early career, but also in grad school, I would like volunteer at ASMS, and that was like really fun to meet trainees at the same time. Seek opportunities to present your work. Of course, you'll want to submit for a poster or oral presentation, and always stay curious. I try to not just limit myself to all the proteomics discussions in my field, but also like metabolomics. Now we're doing metabolomics and mass spec imaging, other fields, because I do think you can learn when you're not just like solely focused on yours. So those are some tips I have for you all.
Well, thank you very much, Laura. It was a great presentation of the time lapse of how should one approach conferences. So I guess we can move on to Amanda to start off the discussion.
Thank you again to all the speakers. It was really fun to hear your personal stories from your conferences and how you've benefited personally from going to conferences. So we'll start off the panel discussion now, and I want to again encourage any of the audience members to submit any questions to the Q&A box on the bottom right screen. But I'll start off with a question that I think probably a lot of trainees have faced at least one point in their over their career, and this is maybe taking a bit of a step back. So prior to even going to a conference, do you have any advice for someone who wants to speak to their advisor about a conference they would like to attend?
Well, I feel like this was a point that I wanted to mention, which didn't get mentioned, but of course, one of the first things is like, yeah, how are you going to get to the conference? Like funding, right? It's a big deal right now. We don't have a ton of money. I mean, we don't go to a ton of conferences throughout the year, right? Because of budget constraints. And I think it's always good if the conference or your university offers some kind of like program grant, support program, or apply for funding some way or shape or form. So that could be your way in, right? Say, I'm going to apply to this funding to get some money to go to the conference. Will you support me? Like if there's, if it's funding is a concern, if it's scheduling, just try to plan in advance. But what about the other panelist?
Maybe I can add the one thing I would suggest is really to come up with a solid pitch. Why why is it going to benefit you as a trainee to go there? Like, how does that fit into your training, your personal development and professional development? And what's the advantage for the lab also? Like what expertise you're going to bring back when you're going to be there? Like I'm going to learn about this and that. You see UPI, you always wanted to explore this. I'm going to bring back the expertise and maybe I can summarize some of the stuff I learned to the rest of the group, right? So really try to see how it benefits you, how it benefits the lab to pitch it. And sometimes I mean, be sure that obviously you look for all the funding you can. I agree with Laura, and say like, oh, I'm gonna apply for all these travel awards and whatever. That's super important. But the other thing is be sure that you know what's the policy in the lab regarding conferences. Sometimes there's like a policy of it's like one conference per person per that amount of year or something like that. Uh, and if you're going beyond that policy because there's that second conference you want to go to, try to find a deal. I'll give you an example. I've done that with my PhD advisor where there was a policy of number of conferences and there was a budget. And I really wanted to go to this conference in Boston because I knew some of the postdoc advisors that I was trying to go to were there. And I just asked my supervisor, look, I will find a way to go there. Can you pay my registration? Because the registration was quite expensive. But I bought a bus ticket to go from Montreal to Boston, and then I bought one of those. I don't know if Expedia still does that, but there's like a lottery for hotels or something. You buy last minute and you get like a random hotel somewhere for super cheap. And I mean, it was a fine hotel. It was okay, but it was like what I could afford as a grad student. So you find ways to make it work, right? So I understand I was privileged to be able to do that, but try to be creative in how you pitch it.
Yeah, no, I agree with all this. I would say bring it up as early as possible. Yeah, just as early as you can. And there's a decent chance, maybe bring it up as a question. There's a decent chance that your PI is already thinking about some training opportunities for you for travel. I definitely have some in mind for my little team right now, like things that I think would be very good for them individually. But bring it up early, and if you can't, if you don't know, as a trainee of all the places where you might be able to find money to be able to go, chances are your PI knows about discussion group funds or departmental things or other places where if you had a good solid plan, like a year in advance and you executed on, you could pull that off regardless of the budget, right? There's those mechanisms exist. I know a whole bunch of them. You'll probably be able to find some being internet savvy and just having a network of your own, but as are the PI also knows them as well if you give them enough notice. So good question though.
Thank you. Yeah, great advice. Thank you.
Thank you for all of your advices. I think I'm running out of the space on my phone because of the taking notes. Nevertheless, we have some questions from the audience. So Coleman Nielsen asks, as a group leaders, have you met graduate students at conferences that you ended up hiring as postdocs? And what made you want to bring them in?
I can say yes. I'm actually trying to do that right now with a postdoc. What made me want to bring them in is simply the match of skills. The skill set was exactly what we were looking for, and that was purely networking. It was ASMS Hospitality Suite, so just talking and then what are you working on, and then the person just by sheer luck is working exactly in what I'm looking for. So I was like, well, do you want to come and visit for a postdoc? And that was it. So yeah, it does happen. It's true.
Yeah, one of the first people I hired in the lab, or the first, I met during ASMS. So I had already posted the postdoc position, right? So it was out there in the ether. And so I was hoping that I'd meet a couple people at ASMS who are interested, right? And so the person I ended up hiring, yeah, we had breakfast one morning and had a great discussion. It's a great time to like meet people in person where maybe you wouldn't get the opportunity if if you weren't there at the right exact time. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible to to meet someone you end up hiring.
I'm the least experienced of this group as a PI, so I can say that US HUPO puts on this pitch your lab thing after hours, and I went and had 5 minutes and 5 slides to pitch my program to collect CDs, and yeah, no, hopefully, hopefully we'll be at a place that I'll do that again in St. Louis. So.
Okay, thank you, panelists. So I have one question, which is more regarding to the conference. So conference schedules are busy. So do you have any strategies how to prevent a burnout during these conferences?
Get some sleep. Maybe don't stay up till 3 a.m. every night, you know? No, I'm joking, but um, no, really, you should have some downtime though. Decompress, go back to your room, just chill for a minute, because you could really just spend your whole day like in the conference center, but it won't be as productive, right? You got to take a break.
Drink lots of water, like actively pay attention and stop and drink water for real. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you could set a timer for that kind of thing, but again, yeah. And when I was a vendor, I remember having like these 7 minute or these 7 a.m. like duties in the hospitality suites in the morning for breakfast, and then having like hospitality suites at night until like whatever hours. And so I would schedule a half hour to just sit in my hotel room in the dark for a little while and then just make sure that I drink a lot of water, because I think you'll end up putting in a big conference like ASMS, you'll do 20,000 steps on it. Like that's not uncommon. And so just making sure you take care of yourself physiologically, right? Like is really important. So yeah.
I'm probably not the right person to answer this question because I tend to exhaust myself into the ground at conferences until I pass out on my flight back home. But I'll tell you two things that I've started, that I implemented. One is water, yes, but also snacks. Sometimes you miss the part where there's food, or you arrive too late at a sponsored lunch or something, and there's no food left, and then you're like, ugh, and then you have to leave. Maybe the conference is not easy to get food at or whatever. So I bring like Cliff Bars and stuff like that. So my bag's always full of Cliff Bars, so I can just have a snack and I can continue. And the other thing that I've started implementing is, and I'm lucky enough to be able to do that, but I try to just keep an extra day after the conference to just relax afterwards. And it's something that it's everybody in my family is happier, because then I arrive and I'm relaxed and I'm like ready to be part of my family. Whereas if I come back completely exhausted and I arrive home and then I was a mess. Yeah, but I mean, I understand that there's costs associated with this, and not everybody can afford that. But that's the strategy I've been using. My trainees would tell you that I run it's insane what I schedule during conferences, so you shouldn't follow my advice. Yeah, they do take pauses, and they have to tell me like I have to take a pause. And I'm like, okay, fine, I understand.
Yeah, I also really suffer from the conference burnout. So that was a great question, and it's really tough. I think prioritizing is also really important. As a trainee, I always try to prioritize like the ECR events as much as possible, because for me, that is one of the more important events to go to. We have another question from the audience from Pratik, and he's curious to know which research conference gave you the best experience, and could you share one virtual conference and one in-person conference, along with what made them special for you? So what conference was one of your best experiences, and why was it special to you?
Well, as the co-chair of HUPO this year, I will say obviously HUPO. No, I'm just kidding. No, but HUPO is great. It's a good one. Obviously for networking and proteomics, that's great. I don't know if I'm able to specify one conference in particular because they often have different objectives for me. HUPO is all my family of proteomics friends, and it's good networking and science is great and everything. ASMS is where I build all the more the commercial collaborations and things like that, and maybe like hear about the super cutting edge stuff that's not published necessarily. Um, yeah, sorry, I'll let my other colleagues give an answer, but I think I have different objectives for different conferences.
I mean, that's really tough. If I was going to highlight a really good conference, the UBIC Winter School a couple years ago. But I went in with a goal of like learning how to run some R scripts from Laurent Gatto, right? And so I went in, I had this very specific skill at being, that was focused on being snowed in and not being able to go anywhere in Germany, locked like 100 people in this place in deep snow for close to a week. That was a really, really special conference for me because you just couldn't get distracted from it. The one thing that just jumps out to me is like I love HUPO, I love ASMS. There's a certain point where I'm not learning a lot there. What I'm going is I'm getting invited to speak. I'm getting to see a lot of things. I'm getting to see a lot of friends. I do think that you should think about those conferences where you could go to a disease-centric conference and boom, you're the proteomics person, right? And you get on stage, and then that helps you find all the collaborators that like the MDs and the biologists. And chances are they have a lot more money than the mass spec people. And of course, I'm approaching this from a kind of from an academics perspective. But I mean, we're a lot more special at that kind of thing, right? And so where, obviously if you are learning proteomics, if you're trying to build your skill, there's HUPO, US HUPO, there's nothing more valuable than going and then building that skill set. Once you've got that kind of in the bag, and you need to find samples to run, and then I try to get to a weird conference outside, like a real biology, a real conference with a bunch of MDs, and walk out of there with some collaborations. So
Yeah, I don't have much to add, but it is, I think I was also thinking about it as like a small conference, right, versus really large. So, my first conference I went to was the Uppsala conference when I was in grad school, which is like, conference for ETD and, CID, electron transfer dissociation, very specific. But there were like very big leaders in the field. They are just a couple handful of people. And it was like an amazing conference. That was the first conference I ever went to because it was really interactive. You could talk to all the people there, right? Versus opposite ASMS, which is like thousands and thousands of people. It just really depends, like they said, what your goals are, what you want out of it. Networking, ASMS is great. Learning, perhaps a smaller conference. And then I would also encourage you guys to think of, it might not be called like a conference, but kind of like what Ben was saying. I go to like a lot of like internal like UNC conferences, if you will, or symposia to branch out of all the mass spec conferences that we can attend and hear about what people are doing in our community, a scientific community at UNC. So make sure you attend. And most of the time, those are free and cheap. And maybe it's not anything related to what you're doing, but you're learning and you could network and be like, hey, you know what? I think we could collaborate because XYZ. So it's my advice.
Can I add maybe just one quick thing?
Sure.
Yeah. Don't forget also I just thought about this with everything that was said, the national or local-ish conferences. It doesn't have to be about a big international meeting, right? What US HUPO is getting a pretty big meeting now, but still is a great conference in the US. CNPN is a fantastic conference also in Canada, where it's great networking, it's amazing science. So sometimes we always think about, oh, I want to go to the big international meeting because that's where everybody goes. But the local ones you get really meaningful networking out of it, and great science. So, and even local, like if you're in a big hub, whether it's like California, San Francisco, San Diego, Boston, New York, you have all these local meetings. Those are really great and they're cheap. So cheap to travel to because you're already there. That's what I mean. So that's a good plus.
Yeah, right. And I think from ECR perspective, your perfect like preference conference can change through time, and it's fine. We also have a small comment about the previous topic from Dorothy about burnout. And apparently it's a good idea to choose the shoes wisely, not to get the blisters, which I guess it concerns all of us. Don't buy new shoes, maybe. Test them out before.
I think we had like a little blue sky conversation about this. Someone in my lab had to throw away her shoes after ASMS because they were like so worn out. Like, yeah, gotta get new shoes, sorry.
Oh, that's quite a workout for the
Yeah.
person.
Gotta claim those and expense reimbursement afterwards. Travel work shoes.
Good tip for getting fountain, that's true. All right, we also have one pre-submitted question. What do you find best way to keep notes and remember everything you need from conference?
I think you're muted, Ben.
Right. I have OneNote on a tablet, and it's actually just an old iPad. That's been my favorite thing. I know that's not a free way of keeping notes. Um, but I was just keeping written notebooks until, and then typing them up afterward until I was visiting Mayo about a decade ago, and I left my notebook. Yeah, I, I, I don't.
I agree with the cloud. I use my phone. I used to originally type notes on my laptop and try to organize those, but then they would get lost. Now I do everything on Google Drive on my phone. I type things. I'm not super well organized with those, unfortunately. Like I just have a folder and I just dump notes and things I want to go back afterwards. So they're all organized by conferences. But my students, some of them use OneNote, and another of my students use Notions, which I've seen the files that she's been using, and it looks quite well organized, and I think she does a pretty good job at like it does a pretty good job at maintaining what she wants to write down. So I'd recommend those. I'm just too old school, I guess, and not good enough to use these.
Yeah, anyway, you get so many notebooks, the free notebooks that you get from conferences. I mean, it's like an encouragement to take notes at conferences. So always have one of those available. But for the lab, right, I talked about like our message board. So a lot of people in the lab will like post their notes on a message board so like the whole lab can read about what they learned, and like maybe they're like, oh, in real time, could you ask them this question? That doesn't happen often, but it has before. So yeah, group discussions or the old trusty notebook you get from a conference.
Yeah, what you said, Laura, it it happened once to me, and it appeared that me and the colleagues thought of the same question, which is reassuring.
Thank you, panelists. Another question is like, do you have any advice for a person who is at a career transition stage? For example, let's say a graduate finishing off and all, or I am an example actually. I'm in transition state. I finished postdoc. I am transiting into the next phase. So, what is the advice for those people who will be attending the conference who are transiting?
I'll reiterate some of the stuff I said because I've done that a couple of times. But one thing I forgot to mention in the planning ahead is not only do you plan ahead to see a certain person that you think will help you go to your next stage, but reach out to those people before the conference and say, hey, I'm actually looking to apply for a job at your institution, or I'm actually looking for a postdoc. I'm going to this conference that I believe you're scheduled to talk to. Would you have 5 minutes to meet? And then usually I know they won't answer. That's the worst case. Worst case scenario usually is you don't get an answer, but then still go, because it doesn't mean they don't want to talk to you. Maybe they're just too busy. But usually you'll get an answer. Say, oh yeah, come see me after the talk or something like this, and then you'll have a brief discussion, and then that can end up being an interview afterwards. So plan ahead, and even reach out to those people that before the conference and say, so sometimes the PI may have time and may say, like, send me your CV before, and they can already prepare before they see you, so it looks less you're less catching them by surprise, and they might be more receptive.
Thank you.
I think it's important to keep an open mind too, right? I think that early in my career, I had exactly zero interest in industry, to the point where I got a job offer, and I showed up late for it, and I really wasn't prepared, and I spent 8 years there, right? Because like at the interview, it ended up turning into like, okay, wait, actually, this is something I could really, really like truly enjoy. And I enjoyed it enough to stick around for like 8 years, right? So I was, and there was no chance that was what I was planning for my career at that point. Keep an open mind. There's a point where, wait, I'm working. You're clearly not. And I know your boss, like, you're not working 70 hours a week as a postdoc. But I mean, if there are things where, maybe you can trade like what you love about doing your own independent research for a better life balance, or for a higher salary or something, and maybe that trade-off works. Keep an open mind about who you talk to, and up to including vendors and like biopharma people and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it can be like the most stressful time, the transition time. I remember it very clearly. And being like trying to strategize before the conferences. Who am I going to talk to? What do I want to do the rest of my life? And I had people I wanted to talk to, right, at that last ASMS, from industry, academia, and government, right? I really truly did, like Ben said, keep an open mind, because first of all, it's hard to find a job sometimes. It's rare that you find the perfect fit immediately. But yeah, reaching out to all of those people. If there's a job posting ahead of time, obviously that's the perfect case, right? Because you've seen the job posting, you can apply to it beforehand and perhaps meet the person who you might work with. So it's planning ahead a lot of times, and putting yourself out there, which can be difficult, but it can really pay off.
Planning ahead seems to be a very common theme of this session. So that's one great takeaway. I also like the idea of keeping an open mind, because you have no idea what might surprise you. We have one more question from the audience, and I think this might be our last question. So Mohammed would like to know what elements should we consider for virtual conferences? I think this is a great question because these are very tough to navigate, whether at a national or international level, and please enlist them from top to bottom. So highest priority to lowest.
And I want to apologize because I think that was part of the question earlier on, and I forgot to address it when they said favorite conferences virtually. Um, I'm not up to date on the most recent like virtual conferences, unfortunately. But one thing that I enjoy in virtual conferences is when they make an effort to try to connect the people that are there, having some sort of Zoom activity with the people that are there, because it gets really difficult if it's just talk after talk online during a day to really stay absorbed and focused, unless it's like a topic that's super pointy in your area, then you're going to be fully absorbed. As it gets really hard, at least for my attention span, to stay for the entire day listening to talks that are not super related to what I'm doing. So I like those that really make an effort in engaging the people that are there, have breaks to do that. So I'd focus on those if you want to invest your money wisely.
You know, I would honestly prioritize it by the one that I can invest 100% of my focus into, right? If I'm going to go to a virtual conference, it's going to be, again, you may be 8 to 10 hours of webinars, right? And if my life is set up in such a way that I'm going to have to cancel things or I cannot shut off my email. There might be a liver transplant, right? And I can't invest 100% of my time in that. Oh, save the money, right? I could YouTube search those the people that are presenting there and probably find them giving 25% of them probably find that they've given a lecture for free online that I can catch that I could focus on. But then on top of it, it's just making sure that there's really something you need to get out of because there's lots of them, right? So I think that's just, make sure it's worth the time and money to put that into it, and that you really can set that time aside.
Yeah, same. I don't have anything to add.
I think that there's also a part of virtualness in hybrid conferences, and there it can become painful if the audio setup is not very good, if the slides are not shared virtually, and some of the conferences address these technical points very well. So it was a nice question. Thanks for engaging of the audience.
Could I squeeze in one question before we go? So my question is this: do you have to be an extrovert to succeed at these conferences? And if so, how do you best fake it?
Oh. I mean, I hate people. I don't know. Yeah, but I think that if you're going to succeed in science, like there's a point where you can't like there are very few exclusive little slots in the field where you can be the antisocial person in the basement with your instrument, right? And those slots are filled by people that are going to hold on to them until they die just because they're cantankerous, right? There's so I think that there's a point where I don't know the best way to fake it, but I think that as collaborative science is these days, you have to. Right? I just don't know. It's a force yourself to do it at whatever means necessary, or or there's other things, right? You could do programming or something like a career that maybe doesn't require that to get a Nature paper. You need 20. What is an average of 16 like authors on a paper that you have to talk to, right? So yeah, sorry, that was a ramble, but I don't know. Good question though.
Maybe I can say I think I might be in a similar boat as Ben. When I go to a conference, it's not like it's a job, and I have objectives, and I'm wearing conference clothes, and I have my conference bag, and I get into like this conference mode, and it shuts down very rapidly after the conference. And I'll give you an example. When I get to the airport to go back home afterwards, I don't want to talk to anybody. And sometimes, and I'll have different clothes. I'll have like my civilian clothes of like me, my airport outfit. And then when I'll meet people at a conference at the airport, usually I'm just like I will continue to enter the conferences, the discussion, but I know that it's not what I'm looking for. And so there's a I don't know, I go in conference mode during the conference, and then it's over afterwards, and that's it. And so I think it's similar to what Ben is mentioning, where I'm not necessarily an extrovert, but I need to for my job in that context. But I enjoy it. I enjoy the conference. It's a different mindset. You gotta go for it.
Mm. Yeah, and I said stay away from your lab mates. But you don't always have to, especially if you're early on graduate student just starting out. It's good to have people you know and can connect to so you don't feel so alone. But it's hard. I mean, we're scientists by nature. We're not the most extroverted people usually. There's some rare birds, but I think it just evolves over time. So don't give yourself don't feel bad about it now if you're really not outgoing and don't want to talk to everybody. Because maybe over time, as you get more experience going to conferences and just putting yourself out there, you will make more connections just gradually. I didn't know hardly anybody, right? When I first started out, wasn't in a big lab or anything. So it's just you gain more and more connections and more confidence over time.
Yeah, if I can add on this, I totally agree because a lot of people I network with now, it's more maintaining network of like they're kind of friends, right? They're friends from work basically that I see. And so it may look like I'm networking with a lot of people, but at conferences I gain a few more connections each time, but then overall it becomes more comfortable because it's my old slippers or my old friend that I see every year at a conference. So it's not as difficult as when you're starting, like Laura mentioning, when you don't know anybody the first time, you're like, oh my God. And you see all these people that are talking to each other. Well, it's the 20th time they've been to that conference, so they know everybody. So it's a lot easier for them, right? So don't get intimidated by that.
We're all just putting on a show, don't worry.
Well, I think we will start to wrapping up from here. So today, during 1 hour, we heard many tips on personal examples, how not to be burnout, how to use conference opportunities to transition between the careers, how to make notes, not to forget anything. And I think anyone who listened to it through live or the recordings, now all of the audience can actually slay the international conference, including HUPO. Thank you very much, everyone. First of all, to speakers for their wonderful advices, to the organizers of the webinar, and to my co-colleagues, moderators.